Hi, I'm Penny Blackmore, and I went to the 2004 Athens Olympic Games. Basically, I started in artistic gymnastics. I really loved it. And then basically I got too tall and they were like, oh, you're really flexible. And I think a scout came to my gym and kind of plucked me from obscurity. So I didn't really decide, and I was pretty bummed about it initially. I was like, I don't want to do that girly sport. Um, I wanted to do like the tumbling, and I love beam and so on. But after I got used to archery, I was like, this is actually pretty fabulous.
And of course, with your extreme ability, you probably found you were pretty good at it early on, right?
Yeah, no, I was really terrible. All the other kids that I trained with started when they were like 4 or 5, and I started gymnastics when I was 10. So I was just so far behind, and yeah, I sucked for years and years, literally like years.
And so
I was
then,
just this like bendy little thing that was just flying around and hopeless.
and when did you start to see success then? Because surely at some point you saw yourself on top of podiums.
Yeah, that happened a lot later in my career. I think I got my first medal at nationals when I was like 17 or something. So I was doing it for many years before I started getting anywhere. Yeah, and it was quite a long journey. Yeah. I was a late bloomer, which was cute.
Well, then what kept you, I guess, what made you turn up every day for 7 years?
So I had always really wanted to go to the Olympics. I was a big kind of fiend for the games. I thought it was the most exciting thing in the world. I didn't actually think I was going to get there, but the thing was, I guess, that after 7 years, I'd put so much into it, and my family had put a lot into it as well. So I really wanted to get something out of it, like just anything. It was just kind of like wanting to have it pay off.
And so, what was the journey to the Olympic Games really like for you then?
I qualified at World Championships the year prior, and pretty much I took some time off after I got home, like 2 weeks or something, and then I came back to training and I dislocated my knee. So then I was out for, I think, about 7 weeks. I had this big metal brace on my leg, and that was annoying. So that was kind of a rocky start. And then when you get the brace off your leg is like really small, all the muscles wasted away. So I had to kind of like get my strength back after that. And yeah, it was just like a lot of training, a lot of like upgrading my routines to try and make them Olympic level snazzy. And yeah, it was hard. It felt weird. It felt very surreal. Like, and by that stage, I was like 20 years old. So I was going to call it after the Olympics. And I was just like, wow, I'm working really hard to get to the end. And then there's nothing else after that. So it's kind of an odd mental state to be in. It was weird and wild, and sometimes good and sometimes awful.
Yeah, of course, I can only imagine. So you had mentioned that you had always wanted to get to the Olympics. Is that just something
Mm-hmm.
you were, I don't know, like I guess, people start a sport and then find that they love it and they're like, oh my God, I'm going to be an Olympian. But was it the other way
Mm,
around for you almost? Like you loved the Olympics
yeah.
so much and then,
So I think like for my generation, we had 4 TV channels. One of them every 4 years, there was the Olympics. You didn't get to really choose what you watched. There was no iPhones, there was no social media. So like we had back in my day, it was like much more, we had more of a focus on sport. And I think a lot of kids were more interested in the Olympics back then. Now it's like, oh, I want to be an influencer. But back then, like lots of kids wanted to be an Olympian. It was considered to be quite a cool thing. And so I kind of like, I always watched the games. I loved the figure skating. I loved gymnastics. I loved all the like sports where women were just like insanely talented and doing these ridiculous, mind-blowing things. And so it was kind of luck that that I became a gymnast after that. And then when I started becoming a gymnast, I was like, it'd be cool to make it to the games. But like looking around me, I just thought there was no way that was going to happen. I was like, oh my God, these other girls are so good. And yeah, so it was nice that it did actually happen. I'm really happy about that. I think for a lot of people like you and I, the factor is like, I'm just going to try, because obviously like World Championships is a qualifying event. Like I may as well go there. I'm of course I'll do this extra 1 year, and hopefully, I'll give it a go. But I had no expectations, like I just didn't think. I didn't think of myself as a winner. I know, I probably still don't, but like, yeah, I hadn't won many times. It's not like I ever sort of like won anything when I was a kid. It was a surprise for me, and it was it was a weird emotional time in a way, because I was like, oh, okay, so now like I have to go from being someone that no one paid attention to being a representative of my country and like of my sport and my team and my coach. And it was suddenly a lot of pressure, which I found very difficult.
So I found it really interesting that, for today's generation of young girls, being an influencer is their idea of being a successful woman. But to you, it was being an Olympian. And when you achieved that, did you feel what you thought you'd feel?
I was pretty happy. I kind of went home and I was like, it's happening. And yeah, I mean, then I think the thing that nobody tells you is that literally everybody in your life is just going to be like, are you so excited? That's the only question they ask you. They're like, are you so excited, Penny? And I'm like, I can't maintain this level of excitement for every person that asks me. So I'm just like, yes, and then I'd run away. But I mean, yeah, it's so much pressure. And back in those days, I'm sort of glad we didn't have social media, but we did have this forum called rsg.net, way before your time. And it's basically where everyone gossiped about rhythmic gymnastics. And I used to go on there and people used to say horrible things about me. And I was just like, ah! So it's kind of like, it was an unpleasant transfer into the limelight in a lot of ways. But I'm actually really glad, like social media would have been 10 times worse, I think. But I guess like it was a real whirlwind. Like even I remember the closing ceremony, I was just like, my coach gave me like a video camcorder, and the next day she was like, you can't watch the footage, it's going to give you motion sickness, because I was just like spinning around like, wow, when I was like on this basketball player's shoulders. And it was kind of, all of it was insanity. Yeah.
What was your most vivid recollection of the games, and what made Athens special?
I was warming up out the back on the actual first day of competition, and I was like freaking out. I was pretty nervous. But I'd also kind of shut down emotionally, so I was like nervous but not knowing what to do with myself. And then you kind of, before the competition starts, that you march onto the floor, and every gymnast from every country puts on their first leotard, and you march onto the floor and kind of wave to the audience. And when I walked out, I was like, I wonder where my parents are. And I sort of scanned the room, and then I just saw this row of people wearing yellow t-shirts with green writing on it. And it was like, G-O, like go Penny, basically, with an exclamation mark. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. Like, this is, and the thing that people don't understand about the Olympics is it's not just you at all. It's your whole family. But yeah, that was definitely the moment that I was like, all right, Penny, let's do this. I know you're nervous, but it's not just about you. It's about this whole institution of the Olympic Games, which is such an incredible, I still love the Olympics. I still think it's like a very pure and a very, it's an institution of like, it has such integrity.
What were your assets as a gymnast or an athlete, and what were you known for?
My coach has always said I had really good feet, and I never really knew what that meant. I was like looking at my feet like, oh, I guess they seem fine. I was flexible. Yeah. I don't think I I don't think I was an amazingly talented kid. You know, I just had this, like, I had these two things. I was flexible and I could jump. I could really jump. Um,
I saw your
and so coaches.
I was like, they are turning split leaves.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I think they were my best asset. Yeah, and I don't think any coach was ever like, you're going to make it, but they were like, you do have really good feet and you've got great jumps, so try and get the rest of it together, and maybe you'll get somewhere one day. You know, just come on, Penny. Like, this could happen, sort of. Yeah, so I think those are the biggest things for me. There's always got to be a kernel of self-belief in there. Yeah, and I guess I had that. In literally whatever I do, if there's some kind of like motivation, I often get it from trying to prove myself. And I think that's actually, I guess it's like the underdog mentality, and I would highly encourage them to channel that rage. I always say that rage got me to the Olympics. I was like a very angsty teenager, and I was like, I've got to do this. This is so important. Yeah.
You know, you were highly creative, but you kind of thrived in a world that was just about rules and regulations, and there's a code of points, but you managed to find your individuality. How did you do that, and how did you thrive?
I think that, I mean, rhythmic gymnastics is a very expressive sport. I wasn't confident enough to show expression until the end of my career, but when I did, I found that was like an enormous creative outlet. I think the music really helps. Like, if you're passionate about music, that's something. And then once you get on the floor and you've got your leotard that matches your ribbon and your clubs, and you've got the hair and you've got the makeup, like, you can get into a bit of a character. So I think while it's very disciplined, it's kind of like ballet. There's a lot of discipline and hard work and horrible, you know, conditioning training, which I don't miss at all. Once you get past that, you get to be creative and show a bit of who you are.
You know, you have this amazing career in media. Was there anything you learned as your time as an athlete that you carried over?
Definitely. So I think athletes are really tenacious. They're like, oh, I failed, but I'm going to get up and start again. And I was talking to my friend in Berlin. She was a competitive swimmer. And I was like, is it just me, or are athletes really good at failing? It's just part of our lives. When we're growing up and we're becoming adults, we're failing all the time. But the nature of sport is to fail and to pick up and start again, or keep going. And so that, like, there's nothing that will prepare you better for life than being an athlete in that way. You're just like, oh, whoops, you know, like, I didn't get into this course that I wanted to get into, or I didn't get the promotion I wanted. And that's okay, because I failed 1,000 times before, and I'll fail 1,000 times again. And that's fine. That's part of life. So I love that about myself, and I'm so grateful, because I actually had a boss once when I got my very first business development job, and I was the only person in that role at the agency, and it was a very tough time for me. Like, I was struggling to just keep on top of things, and my boss was really hard on me. And then when I quit to move to Berlin, I was like, why didn't you just fire me? And he was just like, you are the strongest person I've ever worked with. And I was like, thank you. And he's like, you're very talented and you're very strong. And every time we had a big failure, you bounce back and you'd make it better and you'd work harder. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. And I know that I got that from gymnastics for sure. So I think that's something for everyone to look forward to, is just like understanding that world.